Hey guys, this is Rachel again, and today we're going to be talking a bit about the statement of purpose for graduate programs. So this also might be known as the essay or the personal statement. All these words and terms essentially mean the same thing. But we're going to be talking about what it is, how to write it, and how to create it, and then some tips and some things to keep in mind as you go through this process. So what is this statement of purpose or essay that you all will have to write for your programs? Well, first of all, it's a way for the admissions committee to get to know you as a student and as a person. Specifically for some of the programs that are a bit smaller and the cohorts are just a few students, it's really important that they know who you are and who they are going to give admission to in their program. It's important that you talk about your passion and your interest for the subject. So that should be the thing that leaps off the page for them. You know, why you were interested in this and you know your passion for what you want to study. And nowadays in the admissions process, this can maybe be seen as a replacement for an interview. Some programs still might do interviews via Skype. For certain programs like music, they may do auditions, music or drama. But in general, for most programs, this is the opportunity that you have to show the admissions committee who you are. So what you might be able to do in the space of an interview, in other contexts, this kind of replaces the interview. And the statement of purpose is really a space where you can talk about your motivations, your research, and your goals. So in terms of motivation, why do you want to attend graduate school? You know, this is, we know it's going to be a difficult program. It's going to be un esfuerzo for each of you to go through this process of studying, and especially if you have been out of school for a while. So why at this point in your life is it necessary to attend graduate school? Why do you want to attend graduate school in the U.S.? And why, you know, during your professional career, whether it's in engineering or music or law, why do you need a master's or a PhD to continue and advance with your professional trajectory? Also, in terms of your research, what are your research interests and topics? What specifically do you want to study, and how does that fit with the course offering and the faculty that are teaching and researching at the institution where you're applying? Which professors do you want to work with? Have you spoken with these professors before? Have you had conversations about what research options might be available for you? It's important to put that into the statement of purpose so that they know you have done your homework, so they know that, you know, it is a good fit. What you specifically want to study has an academic home at this institution. And finally, talking about your goals. So this goes back to kind of the committee getting to know you as a student and as a person. What are your short-term goals and your long-term goals? Do you hope to return to Columbia after you finish your master's or PhD program? How do you hope to use your degree? Do you want to teach? Do you want to do research? Do you want to work in a specific type of institution in Columbia? How is what you are going to study going to help you reach that goal? And then how will this program help you get there? So those are kind of the things you can talk about. In terms of general format, it's like an essay, you know, that we have all written in school, even going back to high school. It should have an introduction, a body, and then a conclusion. The introduction is simply a place where you present yourself and introduce yourself and your academic interests. It's a good idea to have some sort of hook, which is what we call it, which grabs your reader's attention and pulls them in so that they know it's just not another essay. And this is going to vary, you know, depending on who you are, your personality, what kind of image you want to portray, what type of program you are applying to. So this is something that's pretty personal. But it, you know, in general, it's important to grab the reader's attention at the beginning of the essay. In terms of the body, Some of the things you may want to talk about are just like above your motivations, but your journey. What has your journey been up to this point, and how have you arrived to where you are? How have you arrived to the point where you are applying to graduate school in the U.S.? It's important to trace that line, that progression throughout your story so that it makes sense. After reading the essay, will the professor or will the reader be able to make sense of your journey and your path that you've taken up to this point? That's an important question to ask yourself. For example, if you have changed jobs or if you've changed fields of study, is this explained in the essay, and does this make logical sense? Can a reader who has never met you understand why you may have started studying one certain type of engineering and are now studying another, or why you started in law and are now doing public policy, for example? So make sure that when you write the essay, it makes sense to the reader. You also can talk about your preparations and your skills. What makes you a good fit for graduate study, and what are some skills you have gained over the past years? And also, how have you prepared for graduate study or for being in graduate school? Have you gotten teaching experience? Have you been trying to do publications, working in research? What specific efforts and tasks have you done over the past few years that makes you a good candidate for the graduate school? And then for the conclusion, you want something where the readers will remember you, but something that also sums up the paragraphs that you've written before. Again, this is not necessarily an easy task. These statements of purpose are very challenging, and just a bit later we'll talk a bit about how to write them. But remember that each essay should be unique. I mean, each person, there's no formula to write this essay because it should be a description of who you are as a person and as a student. So a few things to do even before you start writing. So now some of you may have started your essays, but if you haven't, then these tips may be helpful. And even if you have, you can go back and make sure that you have covered these bases. So before you start writing, review the prompt or review the question. What is the university specifically asking you? A lot of times these are very general. They may say, for example, tell us about your research interest and why you are a good fit for University X. But sometimes they can be more specific, so it's important to read exactly what they are asking you. In terms of guidelines, do they ask for a word limit? Or is there a specific format you should write in? How many essays are there? It's very, very important to keep to that word limit. If they say 500 words or 1,000 words, it's important to stay within that parameter. Third, it's very, very important to go through a brainstorming process. So you can make notes to yourself, make lists, write ideas. In this process, it's, just, well, in English, a term can be word vomit. Just get all the words out, get all the ideas you would like to include, and put them on a piece of paper. There's no right or wrong statement or idea or words during this phase. So, brainstorming, it's important to leave yourself a good amount of time for this. And then you can start organizing your ideas. But at this point, you don't need to any organization. You just want to kind of get on paper as a list or words, in any order, some ideas that you want to include. It's preferable to do this in English because that gets your mind thinking. However, if you want to do it in Spanish, that's also okay. But what we don't recommend is writing the essay in Spanish and then translating it. What's really important is to get your ideas on paper in English, because that's going to change the structure and the whole thought process. So really when you're doing the brainstorming process, if you can start from day one in English, it will probably help you later. And then ask yourself, what is your purpose? What are you trying to get across to the reader? And can you summarize this in 1 or 2 sentences? Can you say, this is why I want to study this area of study, and this is why, and this is why I'm prepared. Can you really do that in a few words, in one or two sentences? It's important to think about that, because if you have that idea, that semilla, before you start the whole paper, you can try to connect everything back to that central idea. That's really, really important. When these essays, there's so many choices of things you can include, but it needs to have a central hilo, or a central idea that runs throughout it. So think about that a bit before you even start writing. What is your purpose? Why do you want to do graduate study? Why you are qualified, and why you would be a good fit for these universities. So in terms of writing the actual essay, just remember that getting started is one of the hardest parts. So once you have brainstormed and have thought about what you want to include, just dive in. Dive in, and you won't probably be happy with your first draft. So the recommendation is to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and keep creating drafts. Eventually you will arrive at something that you're happy with, but the most important thing is to get started, to create a framework, and then we can move around within that framework and make edits. You can also take some distance if you need to. If you've been staring at the same page for 3 hours and you've written 4 words, it might be time to take a step back. It might be time to go back to the brainstorming process and think, oh wow, what is my purpose? Why am I doing this? What are my goals? What are my motivations for graduate school? And with those ideas, hopefully it will put some energy into your writing, and will help you with your writer's block. But just remember that you will need to do drafts over and over again, and that's not a bad thing. So just a few things to keep in mind as you're writing. First of all, think about who your reader is. Your reader is probably going to be a professor who's part of the admissions committee, who has read many, many essays. So what will the professor remember about your essay? How will you get his or her attention? And what is their quote-unquote takeaway? What is the one thing when they think back about fulano from Colombia, what are they going to remember? And that's going to be, again, it's going to be different for each of you, what you want to transmit to your reader and to the professors. But that's important to keep in mind. This is for an academic audience, and it's for people who are experts in your field. So you may not have to explain some things to the professors. You may have to put context about certain things in Colombia. So this probably is not going to be a reader who's very familiar with the country or with the academic context here in Colombia. So it may be necessary to put some extra background in that circumstance. Also remember when you're writing this that the personal statement, the statement of purpose, is simply one component of your overall application package. So it's not necessary to list all of your accomplishments. This does not need to be a repetition of your CV, of your resume. That being said, if you have any special achievements, unique achievements, or really relevant achievements or characteristics that are on your CV that you want to repeat, it's important and perfectly all right to repeat them. For example, you might have won a special prize or have a publication that you really want to mention because it is very relevant to what you're going to be doing in your graduate program. So then please mention that in your essay because it fits. But it's not necessary to list kind of every award you've gotten, specifically if it's not particularly relevant to your research. And you can think of it this way, what do you want these professors to know that might not be in the rest of your application? Another question to ask yourself is, do you have any inconsistencies in your academic record? For example, you had to take a semester off in university for one reason or another, or you have lower grades during a certain period of time for one reason or another. You changed majors. you studied something in undergrad and now you're studying something different. That's not a bad thing. None of those things are bad, but this is a perfect place to talk about those inconsistencies or to explain any aspect of your profile that is unique or that doesn't appear in other parts of your portfolio. The idea is to create a story for the reader that makes sense. What is this journey that this person has gone through and why? It's a matter of helping the reader to understand. I've said this a couple of times already, but remember that this is a reflection of who you are as a person and as a student. So a lot of your personal statement and your statement of purpose is going to depend on your style and your personality. And it's important that it's an academic document. It's important that you transmit your research interests and that you're serious. But it's also important that the reader can understand you as a person through this document. Please keep in mind to rewrite and revise as many times as necessary. And one, I think, particularly helpful recommendation that we give is to get outside opinions. We as advisors can read your essays and can provide you opinions. Your colleagues, your fellow graduates, students, applicants in the opportunity program can read your essays. But it's important to get opinions from people who don't know you. Well, why is this important? Well, because we as advisors know you very well and have heard many times, this is what I want to study and why. Your parents or your friends or your partner really, know you very well. And so maybe if there's something in your essay, it's not explained how you got from point A to point B, but the people who know you make that jump inside their head because they have heard, they lived that story with you. So someone who doesn't know you so well, let's say a coworker or a classmate who you haven't known for too long, might be a good person to read your essay because then they can say, oh wait, this part I didn't quite understand. It's not explained very well on paper. And so you say, oh, well, this is, what happened or how my journey was. And they say, oh, that makes sense. But it's important to have those people who may not be 100% familiar with all of your past accomplishments and your past your history. And finally, give yourself enough time and be easy on yourself. This is, as we said before, this is not an easy thing, but this is something that is really, really important for your application. So start now in starting your brainstorming and starting some of your first drafts, and be easy on yourself if it doesn't all come out in 1 or 2 days or a week or 2 weeks. Take some time and go through that process and use your advisors and use your colleagues as help, because that's what we're here for. So one final thought, after you have had several drafts of your essay and you get to the end, a good question to ask yourself is, can you summarize the main idea in 1 to 2 sentences? Can you summarize what you want to do and why this university should choose you and what makes you unique in 1 to 2 sentences? What is the central idea of your essay? What is the point that you want these professors who are reading your essay to take away and remember after they finish your essay? So can you articulate that? Number 1. And then number 2, is this idea clear and clearly transmitted in your essay? So you've thought about this, you've gone through, you have many drafts. What is the main idea? And is that the main idea that I understand after reading the essay? And so that's when it's good to have people who can reread and help you and have, be sounding boards for ideas. You can bounce ideas off of them, and then that way you have a back and forth dialogue. It can be a living document, let's say. It's a document that is not static. It's not you write one draft and you're done. No, you can keep editing it and make changes until you send it to the university. So that's some information about the statement of purpose, what it is, how you can write it or create it, and then some points to keep in mind. this is something that you can get started on right away. Some of you, again, maybe have already gotten started on your essays, but we really do recommend to start as soon as possible, and you can use some of the points in this video as a guide. And also you can meet with your advisors to talk about some additional tips and how you want to start your essays. So good luck. Again, we're any help you need, we're only one phone call or email or visit away. So so good luck, and we'll be hearing from you soon. Thanks so much.